Hi, I'm Venus O'Hara and welcome to another video. Today, this video is a bit different from my normal videos. I'm going to be interviewing Tova Leigh and I'm so excited. I've wanted to interview her for such a long time now. I came across her last year when we collaborated together on a Masturbation May collaboration for Lilo, and I wasn't really aware of her work. And then I came across the description of her book and I thought, oh my God, I really need to speak to this woman. And let me give you a little bit of context. Last year, when I discovered Tova and I found this book reference, I was going through a little bit of a crisis, actually. I was kind of questioning all of my life choices. So this video is actually about women's life choices because Tova Leigh has made very different choices to me. Let me just read you the blurb of her book, which is called Fucked at 40. Fantastic title. And it's so, just to describe her, she's a creator, a mother, a lover, and social media phenomenon. So in this book, she just explores what the hell you're supposed to do when you find yourself living a life you don't remember signing up for. And it says, I was bored, angry, tired, and sad. I felt all alone, yet I had nothing to complain about. I had a good job, a husband who wasn't shagging his assistant, 3 kids, a house, a dog, and everything else we are told as little girls we should aspire to. Yet, but inside I was growing restless. So it made me think about our life choices, because I've made very different choices. I'm child-free, single, and living a very different life. And I always assumed that people who are on the, let's say, the conventional life path of life, that they had kind of a bit of more of a guidance, that they had, and more of a kind of a path that was well lit, let's say. And whereas I'm traveling a path that's not really, I don't know anyone who's an orgasm activist or who is a commitment phobe like I am, or the child freedom thing. There are not many references of that in our society or maybe in our personal lives. So I was just thinking that maybe people who are on the path, they can be feeling just as lost as people who are not on the path of conventional life. So I guess how we're feeling inside doesn't really have that much relation of what's going on outside or what our external choices are. So I wanted to speak to Tova about motherhood, child freedom, and marriage, singledom, monogamy, non-monogamy, and all of these things, and to compare and contrast. And I hope this is inspiring to you. So it's called Women's Life Choices. Enjoy. About speaking to you today.
Thank you.
I've been thinking for a long time, and I actually wrote these questions a long time ago, and I was trying to refresh my memory just in the last couple of hours, reading your book again, and just some skimming over some bits and the questions. So let me just introduce why I thought about making this video. Well, we collaborated on a video before for Masturbation May, so a year ago, with Lilo. And I must confess, I didn't actually watch that video back. I'm kind of getting allergic to watching things back, actually. I don't know, but so I didn't actually know of your work. But then, and also you are kind of talking about motherhood stuff. So that's very different to my lifestyle. So I just didn't. You weren't really in my remit. But then I saw the blurb of your book in Amazon, and it said. So I just really had to speak to you again because it said that you had everything that people are supposed to want on the outside. Let's say the house in the suburbs, the kids, the dog, and the husband who's not shagging the secretary and all that. But you felt restless on the inside, and I thought, oh my God, that's so interesting, because last summer I was going through my own little crisis because I was actually reading this book, Living an Orgasmic Life, which is a fantastic book. I love the title, but it's hardcore. It's got stuff about sexual trauma in it, and attachment styles. And I was reading the stuff about attachment styles, and it was talking about your childhood and how that affects your adult relationships. And I thought, oh my God, I'm doomed. I've been doomed from the beginning, because I'm kind of like, wasn't encouraged to have friendships when I was younger or boyfriends. And then now I'm totally single and child free. And I've been kind of let's say in a relationship, how would you say it? A commitment phobe. So I'm kind of like, and you're the complete opposite, because I had this impression that when people are, let's say, on the path of life, that the traditional path, that they have all this external guidance and they know what to do. So that's why the blurb of your book really spoke to me, because I thought, oh my God, because I have no guidance. I'm just kind of making up my life as I go along. People who are on this path may be feeling the same way. So I just thought that was really interesting, how maybe we were externally very different, but internally many people can feel lost whether or not they are following the conventional path in life. So I wanted to talk to you today about women's life choices and compare, contrast, and hopefully be therapeutic for me. I know it will. Maybe whoever's watching this.
I don't know. Maybe you'll feel even more confused after this conversation. I don't know. I feel a lot of pressure now.
I'm going to find the answers. So let me see what I was. Yeah.
That's really interesting, though, that what you're saying about your childhood, that you weren't encouraged to have relationships. Wow. And I don't know. I don't know. I think like with everything, there's so many different avenues you can go. It's very broad when I said, everything we are, we're told we're supposed to have. And I listed a few of those things: the house, the dog, the husband, the kids, the minivan, that type of thing. It does paint a picture, doesn't it? But also, like all those things are things I'm very grateful for and I love in my life. Obviously I love my family and I love my dogs, et cetera, et cetera. But I think for me, it was more about the idea of there was just one path, there was just one type of future that I could even picture for myself. Because I guess because messages that I received as a child, whether it was from my family or whether it was from society, from movies, from everywhere, I think that I looked around me, but maybe I wasn't looking hard enough, because, you're an example for someone who made different choices. So obviously there were other things out there. They weren't in my view for whatever reason, And I think the book touches a period in my life where I sort of had a crisis and started questioning those life choices, to the point that I even questioned, were they even a choice? Did I ever really choose this type of life, or was it just the obvious life I was going to live? And I don't want to sound ungrateful, because I know that for many people, this would be a life, what I have done or what I've achieved or the way my life is like great. And and it is great. But there were things that I just wanted to question, I wanted to question, is this a choice? Is this the only way? Is there something else out there? Is this who I really am?
Mine was the opposite, because I felt as though I was making the choices, but then when I looked at this book, I was like, I didn't make the choices. It was set in history. So what else was I going to say? So I thought I was on the path as well, but then I was an au pair in Paris when I was 19, and I was looking after some young children. I just saw how tiring it was, and I was just it really put me off.
Wow.
So yeah, and so let's go into these. Let's talk about the childhood and motherhood thing then. That's quite interesting, because so I had this experience as an au pair, and that really kind of put me off. But before that experience, I was always looking at babies and just cooing over them. And then ever since the au pair experience, I don't even look at babies in prams anymore. Wow. And also I think I had this experience when I was 3. I had lots of kidney infections, and I had to go to the hospital once and get a tube put inside my urethra. So having my legs open and getting these nurses putting this tube in really caused a massive trauma for me. So even though it's not the same hole, anything that's gynecological interventions, I kind of feel like, and I understand that if you're having pregnancies, etc., there's a lot of that happening in child. Yes. I don't think I could handle that. So and maybe sometimes I thought it was very far in the future, but then the years come on, and then that window where we're supposed to reproduce comes and goes, and then it's okay that it hasn't happened really for me.
Yeah, I think it's weird, because for me, totally the opposite. I wasn't the type of girl that cooed over babies at all. Like I would see my friends like, oh, he's so cute and baby, and always other women. So when I was like a young woman, you'd see there'd be a baby in the room and everybody wanted to hold the baby. And I would be like, I don't want to hold the baby. Like, I'm not necessarily, I don't like, I felt like I had to, because otherwise I'm just a bit weird, everybody else is. So I would like, oh, can I hold the baby? And I really didn't want to, and I didn't know how to, and didn't feel that way at all. But then on the other hand, it was quite obvious to me that I would have a family. I don't know why, but it was sort of like a thing. And I didn't have my first till I was 35. I think, to be honest, up till that point, I really I didn't feel the need. I was married before, and with my ex-husband, it was obvious to me that we were not going to have children together. The relationship just wasn't the right relationship for, to start a family. There was a lot of issues there. So it was only when I met Mike and I married Mike that I genuinely felt like, oh, yes, now I feel ready, because I feel like, this is the person I want to have children with. But motherhood is obviously a big part of what I talk about also on my blog and also in the book and just in general. I've said this a million times. For me personally, motherhood didn't come naturally, despite the fact that I'm obsessed with my children and they're the biggest loves of my life. And that was always the case. The job of being a mom wasn't a natural job for me, I think I'm quite a high functioning person, and I'm quite a control freak. And with parenting and motherhood, you feel quite, it's so scary. It's like such a scary job. You realize how, it puts you in a very vulnerable position, and not knowing how to do things. And just, for me, it was a real struggle. I think it really touched on a lot of places in my personality that I'm maybe not so secure in. And I really struggled. And the beginning of how I started to do everything that I'm doing now came from that place, from a genuine, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm looking around me, and everybody, all these other women seem to just know what they're doing, and they've got their shit together. And I'm the only one freaking out and not getting it right. And maybe not even feeling what I'm supposed to be feeling. Something must be wrong with me, to the point where I just couldn't hold it in anymore and had to just have an outlet. And that's how my blog, my thoughts about stuff, kind of came about.
That's fantastic. So I think lots of people are probably feeling the same thing, because what my impression is from the outside of motherhood is that there's a lot of egos involved, and no one's kind of admitting that they're struggling. And but for me, I don't think. I think for me, I'm a natural worrier and insomniac. I don't think motherhood would help me. You know what I mean? But I do think I have a very nurturing side to me. But maybe in the future I'll be a stepmom or something like that. The cool auntie role is something that kind of appeals to me a bit more.
Which is great, because you get to hand them back at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, and I do love teenagers, because I do think part of me is still a 15-year-old inside. I still remember all those struggles, and because people kind of lose that as they get older, the kind of rebellion, idealistic outlook on life. People kind of just end up conforming. So going back to that was marriage and children. Like, what about singledom and marriage? Because I just was going over your book now, and you said something about you imagining not being married or something. For me, I've never had a relationship where I've envisioned a future. I've always had a Mr. Right Now. And that's really cool for me, because I've just changed so much over the last years. I wouldn't choose the same guy now as I would 5 years ago and more. And I felt like I've changed so much that it would have taken a saint to put up with all of that. And I wouldn't have felt as I would have been able to grow in the way that I wanted to if I'd had a relationship. So I've never really seen the future with anyone, really, or the white wedding. I was actually a bridal model, so I've done all those photos with the white dress.
Nice.
So that was cool.
Wow. That's lovely. No, you're right. I agree with you, though. I think that the concept of marriage and the idea of being with one person for your entire life is quite a strange concept. And I'm not even talking about monogamy within a relationship itself. I'm just talking about the idea of just being with one person, forever, and like happily ever after forever. And that is strange, and one of the reasons being exactly what you said. We change so much throughout life. Sometimes you just grow, you just change. You change direction, you grow you grow in a different direction. It's just not relevant anymore. And it sounds cold, and people put a lot of weight on love, but I also question that word a lot. What does that even mean? And what does it feel like, after 10 years of marriage? And not in a defeated way, like not in a deflated type of way, not in that way at all. I feel like much closer to Mike now than I did 10 years ago when we were madly in love at the beginning of a relationship. It's just totally different. I think, and it also, I think, really depends on the personality. For me personally, I love change. Like, I get bored so easily in life in general. I've changed careers 4 or 5 times. I still don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up. I don't see myself as this is it. I'm kind of constantly wanting to explore new things. So why not in relationships as well? It's kind of weird that would be how you are as a person, but then there'd be one big area in your life that you wouldn't allow that. I think I'm very lucky, again, with the partner that I have now, that he's just, it's weird to say, like, he's let me grow and do my thing, because then you think, like, what is let me? Like, you can't stop a person from being who they are, right? But some people might try, or some people might feel intimidated, but he hasn't.
Also, it feels selfish if you just did whatever you wanted in life and not consider the other person, Yeah,
I think so. But I also think that, I don't see it as a selfish thing. I think that, it's labeled sometimes as selfish, and it could be selfish, especially if you're hurting another person, and you're not considering their feelings. But I think for us, it really has been a great journey together. There's some things that he has not wanted to, explore with me or take part of, but he's always been really happy to support and to sort of be alongside. And, that's been great. And by the way, I don't even mean necessarily things within the relationship, just anything. I said to him the other day, I was like, oh, I might get another master's. I'm thinking maybe I've always been interested in economy, and it's like out of nowhere. And he's like, okay, I just need that kind of change and things to happen, And Mike could not be more different than I am. He is very content in his life. He's very happy. He's so not like that, He doesn't get bored from I get bored from routine. He loves routine. He thrives on routine.
What's your star sign?
It's Libra. And you?
Okay, I'm a Gemini, so air signs.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love adventure, love exploring, love meeting new people. Mike's got friends from like 30, 40 years ago. I do have a few friends from years back, but I also change a lot of friends, like in terms of just meeting people. I think friends are for periods in your life. And again, people get very upset when you say that, because it's like, oh, friendships for life. It's just not the way that I've been,
That makes me feel a lot very. That makes me feel very reassured, because I've changed so much. I gave up drinking alcohol 6 years ago, so that really affects friendships.
Wow.
Because then some friendships don't survive sobriety. Because there's no party friends anymore. People say you're boring, or that's when you really know who your friends are. Because they say a friend in need is a friend indeed, but when you're doing really well, that's when you know who is happy for you, genuinely. If you make decisions to improve your life, or you have lots of success or something like that, then you know who's really genuinely for you. So I've been in Barcelona now for 19 years, and I don't have 19-year friendships, unfortunately. No. So they're always changing. I'm still looking for new friendships and connections in kind of more spiritual or personal development circles, which is quite cool. But
I also think friendships also, they sort of take a front or a back seat depending. Again, I have friends who've been friends like for 10 years, and there've been periods in those 10 years that we've been closer, and periods that you've just sort of like not drifted apart, but just not been as engaged, I think the idea of things being very rigid don't work for me. It just doesn't work for me. If things like are too rigid, it just becomes a bit
stifling.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, restrictive. So it's nice when it's just a little bit more fluid and yeah, just a bit more relaxed, chilled.
I guess the next part of my topic for gender roles after marriage and parenthood. So my impression is, did I count those things right? Okay, so my impression is that everything gets a lot more difficult after having children and stuff, but in terms of the battle of the sexes, because I find that I'm kind of really playing the female card to my advantage, being a orgasm activist
Yeah.
and sex toy designer and reviewer. But I think that after having children, that's when things kind of, the battle becomes real, or even more pronounced, the
Yeah.
inequalities of gender. What do you think? That's my impression from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it as battle so much. I think that you're right to say there's obviously gender inequality on every level.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to families, there's a massive gender inequality because it's still very much the norm for, women to be the primarily caregivers and stay home, and there's our whole system is geared up for that rather than for it to be more equal. And there are countries that have better systems in place, and there's better options for families of how to approach childcare, but it's still not where it should be. And then it leaks and seeps into so many other things. For us, on a personal note, it starts from something so basic as, if you spend more time with your baby, you are going to get the hang of things quicker, which means it's like a snowball effect. You will then end up doing more because you've got a better knack for it. So with me and Mike, just to bring it into perspective, baby was born. He went back to work after 2 weeks. I stayed home. So neither of us knew how to shower a baby when she was born. Neither of us knew how to put a nappy on. Like I said, I was not the maternal kind of persona. So I didn't know how to do all these things. I had no idea, but I was there day in, day out, doing it, practicing it, getting better at it. So then when he would come home and sort of try to do something, he would do it really badly compared to me because I had more practice. So then it starts like a snowball effect of you going, oh, no, you're doing it wrong. Let me just do it. And then before you know it, there you are doing everything, even at the point where you didn't have to. So for us at the beginning of the relationship, it was very much, I was kind of like more in charge of the kids and he was back to work. And this was true even in periods that I worked, which is like the biggest inequality, possible thing. And that was one of the things I never questioned. I just never questioned it, even though I think I've always been a feminist at heart. And I certainly, I was certainly always driven by my career as well. I don't know why that was just something that I never questioned. So there was a point, I remember, there were so many points on the way that were like eureka moments. One of them was very early on, actually, at 4 months. I did a show in Edinburgh, and we both went up to Edinburgh, and Mike was running a venue there, and I had to leave to go and do my show one evening at 5, and I was petrified. The baby was 4 months old, my eldest, and I was like, oh my God, he's never done the bath by himself. He's never he's never done the feed by himself. What's going to happen? She's going to die. It's going to be awful.
Oh.
Yeah, I know, really, because I'm also a bit paranoid and really a control freak. I said that, like, giving over the sort of responsibility was very hard for me at the beginning. But of course, he managed and everything was fine. And it sort of opened my eyes to, oh, okay, I need to stop taking over everything. And this is like a two-way street. It's not just me. And that was a good experience to have quite early on. And then later, much later, when they started school, and I don't know if you know this, there's these annoying WhatsApp groups with the school and the parents. It's like a group for everything. You've got a group for each class and a group for the after school ballet and after school whatever. And people kept adding me to the groups, and I was the only one on them. And then after I had forgotten a few things and sort of like a few balls got dropped, I sort of turned around to Mike one day and just asked, why are you not on the groups? Like, I don't understand how it happened that actually you're not part of this conversation. And that was another moment. He just went, I don't know. I don't know why. Nobody added me, you know?
Because there's something in your book as well about when a
Yeah.
guy looks after the kids, it's like, oh, didn't he do well or
Yeah.
something? And it's like when the woman's
Yeah.
doing it every day, I really kind of
And to be
struck a
fair on
chord
him,
with.
like it was never a conversation that we had whereby he turned around and said, no, I don't want to be involved, or no, I'm the one that works more hours a week, so you should be doing more. He never said those things. We just never had those conversations. It was just sort of like the done thing. And then when we started having those conversations, we both realized that actually there was no real reason for it. We both work from home. We both have our own business, you know, we both do the same hours a week. So what was the reason? There was no reason. So things changed gradually. And I can say hand on heart now that it's a 50-50 partnership. There's no one person driving this kind of car. We're sort of both at the driver's seat. And I think the best benefit of this was, apart from my own sanity, because, trying to do everything and be everything and all of that is like, can drive anybody insane. Is actually what my kids are benefiting from it, because we've got 3 daughters and they're very close to their father, and they see a guy that is super involved in their lives and is interested and is there, doing everything. And I hope that'll hopefully be a really good role model for them when they go out to
Well,
find a partner
definitely.
in life.
Because I grew up with a very traditional role
Yeah,
models, and
me
and
too.
I was determined not to be a
Yeah,
replication of my mother or my aunties who were always making the dinner and doing everything,
yeah,
and the guys do nothing. And I just thought, no way am I going to do that. And subconsciously or consciously, I've always chosen guys that are very tidy because I'm very messy, and I think that's kind of like a protective barrier. Like, I'm not, you're going to be your domestic goddess. Look at the mess I'm in, and so I've always been very, very tidy guys, and also good cooks. Because
oh,
every time, I
nice.
mean, a lot of the meals I put on Instagram, it's actually my Mars O'Hara who's made them. I just make the salad. So I've always attracted that type of guy. So it's quite cool
Oh,
to
that's nice. Yeah, that's good. Self-sufficient.
definitely. So I'm going to go back to talking about your book. Actually, it was the first ebook I ever read, because I love
Yeah.
actually physical books. And I was on a train going to, I don't know if you know the Camino de Santiago. It's a pilgrimage. It's a walk on the north of Spain. They call it St. James's Way. It's a very
No?
cool. It's a pilgrimage. It's very, very cool. And anyway, I was on a 6-hour train to get there to start this trek on my own. And then you talk about trekking in Everest. So that was very funny, because I was actually going on a walking holiday as well.
Wow.
So actually, it was a great distraction in the train for me. I just devoured it, literally.
Oh,
I read most of it in the train. And some of my top takeaways, I was looking through it now and I can't find where this particular part was, but there was something you talked about, body or sexual autonomy, that really struck a chord with me, that went back to like why I haven't become
yeah.
pregnant or something, or because I'm a real control freak, and
Yeah.
also having that experience when I was younger about having this
Yeah.
kidney infections. And I
The
think you mentioned
trauma.
something about that maybe that happened after having the children, and I thought that was really interesting, because that's kind of like prevented me from having
Yeah.
children.
I think,
So,
yeah, when you talked about your trauma from the kidney infections, I immediately thought about that part of the book. For me, I just think, for me, it was about the connection with body. So with my body, I realized, and I didn't notice it at the time, that I had lost connection with my body. And this was a gradual process. It didn't happen like overnight. It wasn't like a one thing. I actually think that for women in general, uh, that happens more often, because our bodies are very often sort of like there for other people.
mhm.
So even if it's like you said, I don't know, going to the gynecologist, you sort of sometimes have to sort of detach yourself a little bit, because it's very odd to be poked on the inside, and you sort of have to, in a way, remove yourself a little bit, even though you understand that this is for your own benefit and it's just a medical examination, whatever, but it's not pleasant at times. And I think we just as women, we sort of get on with it and you get used to it and it's just the norm. And then later on, when you're pregnant and you're just constantly prodded and poked and and in delivery as well, I had a C-section. I felt like I felt like a piece of meat, you feel the tugs. It's just the most weird feeling. And then even in motherhood, breastfeeding, yes, it's for a lot of women it's a magical bonding opportunity. I didn't feel that way. For me, it felt very much like, oh God, this part of my body that was there for so many years as a completely different, for a different reason. Like my boobs were my switch buttons, to turn me on. All you need to do is just go at my boobs a little bit and I'd be like, woo, ready to go. And suddenly it's like, don't touch me. I can't bear it when anybody touches me. They change purpose so drastically. And then you've got your kids and they're touching you and they're pulling you and they're poking you. And I just feel like I lost my body. And it wasn't even about what it looked like. It wasn't about the C-section shelf. It wasn't about the weight. It wasn't about that. It was about just losing it. It wasn't mine anymore. It just didn't belong to me. And then when I went on this kind of journey of reclaiming my sexuality, I realized that I couldn't even reclaim my sexuality before I reclaimed my body, because it just didn't feel connected to it at all. And that was a real wow moment, and that was and again, that started like a whole process, and I did so many things to try and get that feeling of ownership back, and a lot of it involved movement. Moving your body was like so important, and yeah, and just I don't know. I haven't spoken about that a lot outside of the book, but whenever I have mentioned it, it's been something that has really resonated with a lot of women. And I actually don't think it's talked about enough at all.
Yeah,
we
totally
just take
agree.
it for granted. We expect as women to go through these things. So when they happen and you sort of feel like, oh God, I don't feel connected, you just go, well, I guess I'm supposed to feel that. Yeah, I guess this is normal, and it's like, well, no, no. Where is the recovery from that? Where is the, taking that ownership back, of our bodies,
So I went on a yoga retreat for Christmas a couple of years ago, and I was thinking, who's going to go on a yoga retreat for Christmas? And it was actually all women, and a lot of them were divorced or separated. And it was the first Christmas alone without the kids and all of that. And I really revolutionized them, because I kind of got them buying sex toys when they left. But it was just incredible to think about some of them who had been in marriages of 25 years, and the vagina had been, this is like the birth canal for the children. It's been I call it garage sex. Yeah. Which is just like maintenance sex, which is like the guy just wants to stick it in kind of sex, you know what I mean? So it's just like constantly for someone else, and it's not really for yourself. And so they were kind of really amazed when they discovered, a satisfier or just kind of a sex toy just to kind of get their own sexuality and body back. So
and that's also true. That I think like links to something slightly different, but also, that's more about, I guess, it's also sexuality, but, just what you said, like sex as a performing sex for someone else, like just the idea of performing sex, than actually,
being a part of it, being actively involved.
Yeah. And doing it for yourself, for your own benefit. I've heard so many women usually women like in their 40s onwards that have this kind of like awakening. But one of the things they say is like, I used to care so much about what I looked like during sex, whereas now I don't care what I look like. I just want to enjoy what I'm doing. And that's freed them sexually as well, because I think if you're constantly thinking about, am I attractive in this pose, or, do you know what I mean? Like, are my boobs perky when I'm, doing this or that? Are you really, like, how much are you going to really enjoy and get pleasure, like, for yourself? And that, I don't know, so.
And also, like, I would prefer someone to completely just be at ease, and just, that would be more of a turn on anyway,
I think so.
Not the conventional,
I think so, yeah. I think so. Yeah.
And the next point on my top 5 takeaways from your book was travel. That was really interesting, because I can imagine being a mother, it's a lot more difficult to kind of do a trip on your own. It's a really big deal, whereas guys just take off at the, you know, they can kind of go on business trips very easily, you know, no one bats an eyelid, whereas if a mother goes away, then it's kind of like a more of a big deal. So that was really interesting as well, going back to kind of different gender roles. And because I was really inspired me as well, because I have a very different life to you, and it made me think that I want to kind of make the most of my situation, because I don't have those commitments. But then COVID happened, so no travel.
Yes.
But yeah, I definitely felt you know, for the complete opposite of like, I want to travel more because I don't have any reason not to, you know. Kind of thing.
I mean, it definitely was a barrier to get over. Like first time we sort of decided to do a girls trip. It was Ibiza, and it was like 3 nights, I think. And it was such a big palava, you know, like just getting a few friends to actually come with me was so difficult, because everybody was in the same boat, you know. They were all moms with kids, very different ages, and and a lot, you know, I'm not gonna lie, like for me it was a big deal initially. There is a lot of mom guilt involved in it. Now, when I look back, I realize that there shouldn't have been, and it was all okay, blah, blah, blah. And you're right. Mike goes away every summer for 2 weeks to Edinburgh. He does it for work, but, you know, he never thinks twice about it. It's not even something that he, you know, he misses the kids, he misses us, but he doesn't feel bad that he has to go. He doesn't torment himself over having to go. It's very matter of fact. So that was something to really get over. And then obviously the trip to Nepal was one of the things I did on my big bucket list for my mom life crisis. And that was like a nearly 3 weeks in very far away, you know, with my brother. And it was like, that was a big deal. And I honestly, looking back, don't even know how I did it. I'm so happy that I did it. Like, I'm so happy that I just did it. I don't know if I could have done it again. Like, it's one of those things, like, God, would I have done it again? I don't know. But very close to the trip, I nearly backed out. I said to Mike, I don't know, maybe I should ask my brother to just take someone else. I didn't want to let my brother down. And I was like, oh, what do I do? And Mike was like, you're going. Like, this is ridiculous. And for me, I hate flying. I'm genuinely scared of flights. So there was even like more guilt involved, because, you know, for me, I was going towards my death. And I was basically going to leave my kids behind. What kind of mother?
And you weren't contactable either. There was like no Wi-Fi or anything like that.
No,
like,
most places we managed, and it was okay. But you know, it was an amazing experience. I think that, you know, I think, again, I look now from another perspective. My daughters prepared a flag for me that said girl power and had their names on it. And I was going to hang it up on the mountain, and I did, and I filmed it for them. And I just, you know, I thought to myself, like, hopefully, again, this will inspire them one day to sort of go, right, there are dreams that you're never too late to go after. And there's things that even you should do, you know, you should do. And they were fine. They were at home with their father. Like, it's not I left them in the forest with a pack of wolves, you know. They're absolutely looked after. Yeah, it was fantastic. Really great.
It was great. I didn't sleep as well as you did on your walking trip. I was like, I'm quite a terrible insomniac. Another thing in your book that surprised me is the Irish fluffy potatoes, because my parents are Irish. I was brought up on potatoes every day, so I didn't know that people didn't have potatoes every day. I was like a big wake up moment for me.
God, I loved Irish, that Irish background. My mom was born and raised in kind of County Cork, tiny little village.
County Cork. My mom's from County Cork.
Really, where?
Bantry, Glengarriff.
Oh, okay. No,
you know that it's actually west to Cork, so it's on the border of Kerry.
Oh, okay.
It's really beautiful. It's about
quite close.
1.5 hours.
So my mom is from like Glandore area.
Don't know. Is it by the sea or inland?
Yes, it's by the sea. Yeah.
Oh, cool. I spent all my summers as a child there, and it was very freeing. It was incredible. Too. Wow. I used to love it.
Yeah.
But obviously, I had that kind of like Irish Catholic upbringing in England, with all that fear of like the city. That's probably why I had all this kind of very strict upbringing.
Yeah. Wow. No, it's one of my favorite, like best memories are summers in Ireland. Best memories. And my grandparents had a vegetable garden and they grew potatoes.
Oh yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
And the
So,
cows, and
yeah.
used to go and pick up the cows at the end of the day. It was very
So
cool.
good. I loved landing in Cork Airport, and as soon as you came out the plane, you'd smell the cow
Oh
poo.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The
Smell it
tiny
on the runway.
airport.
So
There's
good.
always, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well,
brilliant.
actually, I'm going to have a big reunion with all my cousins there
Oh wow.
next summer if we can all fly there in Glengarriff.
Nice.
So actually, Maureen O'Hara had a house there, so that's why I've used the name O'Hara, because it's just a big inspiration for me. But it's a really, really beautiful place.
Yes.
Definitely love it there. So another thing I really admire about you is that you have you've made a career on your own terms, because that's because you were an actress before. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's really good that you've kind of done it on your own terms, and I kind of identify with that as well, because I've totally invented my own job as well, and I used to do lots of art at home and record my videos at home. So it's a kind of like become a studio, and it's really good to be able to say you've done that. Really, I think it's it's incredible achievement. I think.
It's funny because I agree with you, but I'm not gonna lie. Like sometimes I always find myself sort of questioning, and I don't know. Sometimes I find myself comparing to other people, which I know you shouldn't do, blah blah blah. But it does happen sometimes, and then I think, there are people who built their careers like in a more kind of I don't know how to say it, but traditional way. They get you know what I mean? And I'm a bit like, oh, why didn't things happen for me that way? And then Mike will say to me, but no, it's so much better the way you've done it. You've forged it your own way. Like you've made it yourself, like, and you've done it. And I go, oh yes, why did I not see it that way? It depends on what day of the week you catch me on. I could be some days when I'm like, this is great, and some days I'm like,
I totally identify with that, because I
yeah,
started off as a fetish blogger, and then it
right,
became more kind of media in Spanish media, and then it became I wrote 3 books here in Spain.
wow,
And then because of my position, I used to write for El País, and I started to receive lots of free sex toys, and I put 2 and 2 together, and then started reviewing sex toys, and then started making content in English. That kind of launched me to the world, so to speak. And so every couple of years, my job or my day-to-day thing has evolved completely. Whereas I do sometimes wonder if when I look at other people who are more specialized, let's say they're a sexologist or they're a writer.
I know,
but I think that's so boring, because I mean, I would like to do the same thing I did 5 years ago, because 5 years ago I was more concentrated on writing, whereas now it's making videos, and I'm thinking about starting a podcast. I'm actually going to start making meditations. I'm really big into meditation and sex magic. So
that sounds amazing. Oh God.
It is. I've been doing sex magic for 3 years. It's so cool. It's basically it's like the law of attraction visualization, but using your sexual energy towards a goal. So basically, you think about something you want, and then you masturbate, and then you just before the orgasm, you really focus on that thing. And I've been doing this for 3 years, and it's changed my life. I'm telling you, my whole life has just evolved to a place where I don't really recognize it now. I've paid my debts off. I've just done loads of things with I've really focused on abundance a lot of the time, and I listen to affirmations while I masturbate about abundance, or about health, or about different things like that. So it's really cool.
I love it. But this is what I loved about our conversation last time. It's like, it's so great. It's like you masturbate and you meditate and you also do the affirmation all in the same. It's like multitasking
with crystals. With
yes. You're ticking all the boxes. Like, this is so good. It's like most people just have a wank and it's sort of like pointless, but you're it's so good. I love that.
It's definitely sacred for me.
Fantastic.
Ever since I discovered sex magic and sexual transmutation 3 years ago, that's when it had a whole new meaning for me. And that's the great thing about our jobs, is we can still evolve and have a new project and just do it. Whereas a lot of people who are writers or sexologists, they don't have this kind of opportunity or the choice. And a lot of the time in my career, I have been criticized by some sexologists, especially here in Spain. They say, if you're not a sexologist, you don't have the right to speak about sex, which I completely with, because if you're a sexologist, you have responsibility, which I don't want responsibility. I just want to be an artist and just share my own vision and my own experiences.
And also, like, I think, isn't sex at the end of the day subjective? Like, you could be experiencing it one way and someone else could be experiencing another in another way. So I feel like your approach to sex is probably more not like spiritual, but like in cosmic, like, you know what I mean? Whereas sexologists will talk a lot about
more clinical way.
Yeah, clinical relationships.
Less personal. It's not personal. And also because if they got that like title, they have a certain responsibility to act a certain way or to respond to things certain ways. I do not want any responsibility.
Sure.
I just want to share opinion. Okay. So another thing that's interesting about your book is the ideas on monogamy, because I'm actually a total monogamist. I think I would define myself as a naturally monogamous commitment phobe, which is a bit weird, but I don't want to kind of give my future to anyone. But when I'm with someone, I kind of just be with that person. But I haven't had a relationship that's lasted over 10 years. That might be it's a very different type of relationship. But I think that's what's really interesting about your book, that people are interested in, because people are kind of interested in or curious about how you overcome that obstacle after so many years. And I think that's one of the, it's a very intriguing point in your book at the beginning.
Yeah. I think that I mean, obviously, I touch on the monogamy thing very briefly in the book. It's definitely not the main thing of the book, but it was there.
Am I the main thing that people remember?
Yes, it's a thing that caught a lot of people's eye, but I think it probably did because, whereas you'd expect maybe a sexologist or someone who maybe is living a more out there life to maybe talk about monogamy or talk about non-monogamy more so. You maybe wouldn't expect it from me. But then again, on the other hand, I'm definitely not an expert either. And for me, the reason to include it in the book was not because I actually wanted to expose, a very personal part of my life, or because I had even so much to say about it. It was because it was one more area that I questioned. It was one more area that I realized that I had never really given any thought to. I was born in a society whereby monogamy was the norm, is the norm still. And actually, till very recently, I had never really thought about or even considered what the other options were. And if they ever crossed my mind, I had a lot of judgment towards them that came from no knowledge, because I didn't even know anybody in a non-monogamous relationship. So how did I have such strong positions about something that I literally knew nothing about? And that was more what was shocking to me, was just the fact that I had never really given it any thought. And in that year whereby the midlife crisis was happening, and I went to the nude spa with my friend Eva, and she's from Finland, so she's super fluid, and her background's like Scandinavian, so like their approach to sex and monogamy is like very different from how I grew up. So conversations with her and then other people we met along the way really opened my eyes to go, oh my God, like here's another area that I have never really thought about ever. And that's kind of where that whole thing came about. But also, I definitely don't want to define myself in any one word, i.e. to say I'm monogamous, I'm not monogamous, I have an open marriage, I don't have an open marriage. I think those are just words. They're so limiting in what it is, and we just spoke the whole conversation about how you change in life. Things don't stay static. So even within that conversation, things didn't stay static for us. And from conversations I've had with other people who explore, other relationships apart from the traditional monogamous relationship, they don't stay static. You start the conversation in one point and you might end up in another point, and then maybe the conversation will go back, and maybe you'll go back in a full circle. Who knows? But the point is that it's a conversation. And
I think most people are very afraid to even acknowledge that there's desire outside the couple, the partnership. That's very taboo still.
But this is how it started. It started from there. It started from just being able to say, without judging myself, to just say, oh God, I remember, it's in the book, when I went on a walk with a friend and I was like, you know what, I think I'm going crazy because, you know, I love Mike and I love the kids and I love my life. But sometimes I sort of fantasize about like running away with a 20-year-old, like, you know, and just like having a week in Bora Bora. Like, is that crazy?
Mm.
And then she was like, no, I would go as well. And it was like such a, when you think about it, like such a crazy thing to just not be able to even just say, because there's so much judgment and guilt when you kind of admit that. You feel like, oh, I'm an awful wife, I'm an awful mother, I'm an awful person. Who says that, you know? And I think for women as well, to express desire is very frowned upon. You know, especially if you're a married woman, and especially if you are a woman over a certain age, then you really shouldn't have any desires, you know, at all. So
speaking of age, I mean, this woman on this book, she had a sexual peak at 51. So this is like something to really, after 25 years of a sexless marriage. So
there you
it's
go.
Just incredible. I don't believe that you get to an age and then it's over. I think it just changes.
No,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah, and I used to be into like BDSM when I was younger, and now it's like, no way, I want tantra now. It's not about roles or superior domination and submission.
But you see, that's so good, because that's exactly the point. Also, I think people want to pigeonhole we want to pigeonhole each other all the time. So if you were into one thing 10 years ago and that doesn't apply for you anymore, you probably still get people kind of expecting you to still be the person to talk to about that. And you're a bit like, well, I'm not there anymore. Like, I get that a lot. People still really want me to talk about the kids, you know, because the beginning of my blogging was about the children and the children. I'm a bit like, well, I don't really feel the need to talk about that anymore. It's like, it's not where I'm at, you know. So the same goes with relationships. I think they change. It's dynamic. You know, I don't know where we'll end up. I don't know. You know, time will tell. But the number one question I do get, if there are any listeners, if anybody's watching this and is wondering, from women, is how to even start the conversation, if it is something that you're intrigued by. I would just say, you know, each relationship is different. For us, it wasn't about trying to fix something that wasn't working. It was about adding to what we already had. And it was about utter and total honesty. My honest truth was, it wasn't about like him, it was about me. So I focused about me and talking about me. And then I think that helped, because he didn't feel threatened. But I understand that it might not work for everyone, but that is how it happened for us, you know.
What I would suggest is in that situation is to do role plays.
Oh yeah,
because I think you can just become someone else. Because when I was first discovering sex, I was like a shy virgin, and the guy I was with wanted me to be a dominatrix. So it was like, how do I do that? So every time we used to meet up together, we used to have these different role plays, and that's how I kind of consider myself an actress. I've done lots of commercials and stuff thanks to my role play experiences. But I think it's kind of fun to become someone else, like the builder or the plumber, or, you know, just to have these different roles. I think you can, or even the 20-year-old. I mean, you could even try that.
That is so true.
Yeah.
That is so true. And actually, I have to say, like, with regards to role play, we never really got to do proper role play. But when you say role play, I immediately think of comedy.
It's funny. It's very horny as well, though.
I know. And people don't necessarily associate sex with comedy, because you think, no, sex needs to be, you know, sensual and la la la. But I don't know. For us, comedy is always therapeutic in my life, in anything. And I think even in sex and relationships, there's room for comedy. If you can laugh at yourself and you can laugh at the situation and take the piss out of it a little bit, then suddenly it's not so threatening as you would have thought. You know, those type of conversations become less threatening. The whole thing just becomes less serious. And I'm not dissing. Relationships are serious, of course, they're important. But, you know, like, I just think in a bit of perspective, there's room to laugh, you know?
Oh, definitely. I think if you laugh at everything else becomes easier. Like, for example, premature ejaculation is not such a big deal. You say, I'm flattered, I'm so flattered, you must really like me. Or, you know, just lots of situations could be overcome with with humor.
I think so.
Okay, I think we've reached the end of our therapeutic call.
Well, did it feel therapeutic or not?
Oh, definitely.
Good. Yeah.
Definitely,
Yeah, it
definitely.
was fun. It was so fun to
Yeah.
catch up, you know. Feel like it's been so when was the last we spoke a year ago, wasn't it? It's like literally a year
Yeah.
ago.
It was
Crazy.
I think it must have been around July or something.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Amazing.
had my half face. So it's funny when I saw the picture of your book, I'll edit this bit out. But I was like, that was my face, that kind of like side smile.
Uh,
So let's go back to call to action. So your paperback is out now, is that correct?
yeah, I've got it in my
Oh,
hand. I'm
how
here to
cool.
show paperback.
How
Yeah, and the
cool.
paperback actually includes an extra chapter about
Oh,
life in lockdown. Um,
ah,
and how and vibrators, of course,
of
because
course.
let's face
Very
it.
essential for
Yeah,
lockdown.
exactly, essential.
Mhm.
And yeah, and you can get it worldwide on Amazon. It's also on my website, toverleigh.com /books.
Okay, well, I'll link to those in the
Thank
description
you.
below. And
And I
thanks.
also have another book coming out in September, which is already available for pre-order, and it's called "You Did What?" question mark.
Oh, that's exciting because you talked about
Yeah,
saving sex party for the second book, and I was like, okay,
yeah.
that's a definite a
I
selling
actually
point.
don't think it's in that book, my
Oh,
because it's a confession book, so it's a different it's a different direction in terms of the
mm,
book. But it is a book packed with secrets and confessions, but not just mine.
mhm.
They are secrets and confessions from my community, actually. So from my followers who've sent them in, and from literally around the world. It's global. It's fantastic. There's every country under the sun. So nice. And secrets about sex and relationships, but not just, parenting and revenge stories and stuff in the office. Very funny. And some quite dark, actually, as
Mm,
well. Yeah.
sounds intriguing. I have to check that out. So let us know your Instagram as well,
Yeah,
please.
so you can find me on Instagram, Tova_Leigh, or on Facebook, My Thoughts About Stuff.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I'm feeling very relaxed now, and it's
Good.
been very therapeutic.
Oh, amazing.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I'll just stop the recording.
Thank you so much for watching this video if you've got this far. I'm going to be leaving all of Tova's links in the description below, and I would love to hear your comments on this subject, so please leave a comment. And I'll be back soon with another video. Bye. Thanks for watching.